Chapter 10, Ashley. In the last 2 weeks, I'd done things I never have dreamed of doing before. It started the day Dylan and I went swimming at the reservoir. Just cutting school felt dangerous enough, but the next thing I knew, we were slipping through a small break in the fence surrounding the reservoir. I felt bad, wonderfully bad, as we sat under a tree and looked out at the water. "Let's swim," said Dylan, taking off his shirt. I didn't bring a bathing suit. I said. "You don't need one," Dylan replied simply. But even I had my limits. Wild or not, I was not about to go skinny dipping with Dylan. I wasn't too sure about swimming in just my underwear either. So I said to Dylan, "Oh, the water's way too cold." But he took off his shirt and tossed it to me. "Here, you can swim in this." I hesitated, but decided it would be okay. We paddled around in the water for a bit, then we kissed. I don't know. It should have been exciting, but it all felt so weird. I couldn't stop thinking about Matt. After that day at the reservoir, Dylan and I did a lot of things. He took me up into the hills a couple of times and taught me to ride his dirt bike. One morning we even cut out after homeroom and took the train down to the city. We spent the whole afternoon wandering around. I bought all sorts of weird jewelry and clothes in these wild little stores. I knew, though, that it was just a matter of time before my luck ran out. In the second week, the cutting notices started to come. Each day I got home before my parents, which meant I could take all the notices out of the mail. Still, my parents were sick with worry. They knew something was wrong. I didn't want to hurt them, but after all, this was my life, not theirs. And I kept thinking that it was their fault, that I had always tried to be so perfect. They loved telling their friends about their straight-A daughter. I had always tried so hard to please them that I didn't know who I really was. So now it was time to stop pleasing them and to please myself. Still, I wasn't always happy with the way things were going. My schoolwork was a mess. My nicer teachers had all asked me if there was anything I wanted to discuss. My crabbier ones told me I'd better straighten up and fast. Things were getting a little more out of control than I'd planned. How did Dylan stay so unconcerned about everything? There may be a lot of pressure in being good, but there's pressure in being bad too. Adults hassle you every second. Dylan never let it get to him. Anything an adult said to him went in one ear and out the other. He just carried on doing exactly what he wanted to do. I couldn't be like that no matter how hard I tried. I heard what teachers and parents said, even if I pretended not to. I heard them, and I worried about it. Then there was Matt and Courtney. I tried not to, but I missed them. Matt called me a couple of times and tried to talk. Each time I gave him the brush off. Then one night he called up and said something that surprised me. "Courtney and I know why you're so upset." "Why?" I asked. "You read Courtney's diary, haven't you?" I sucked in my breath sharply. How had they found out? "What makes you think that?" I hedged, too embarrassed to admit the truth. "I saw Brooke doing it," Matt cried. "And it's the only explanation for why you're acting so strange." "Maybe that's how it started," I admitted, "but now I don't want to go back to the way things were. I trusted both of you, and I was all wrong. Now it seems that everything I ever thought was wrong, everything. If I could have been that wrong about you and Courtney, then who knows what else I've been wrong about." "You haven't been wrong about anything," said Matt. "Yes, I have," I shouted, hot tears pouring down my face. "I've been trying to please everyone, but nobody cares about pleasing me." I slammed down the phone and ran upstairs to my room. I threw myself on my bed and cried and cried and cried and cried. I really missed Matt. I didn't want to fight with him. I missed his gentleness and caring, but I couldn't get over the feeling that he betrayed me, and it hurt so much. What I said to Matt was true, though. I hadn't realized it until the words came out of my mouth. Feeling betrayed by Matt and Courtney had made me question my friendships and everything else too. Suddenly being a straight A student didn't seem so important to me. I mean, I'd probably get into college if I got all B's, maybe even a couple of C's. So why bother studying so hard? I rolled over on the bed and wiped my eyes. Did I really believe all that, or was I just repeating things Dylan had said to me? Sitting up on my elbows, I had a kind of upsetting thought. All this while, I thought I was finding the real Ashley, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was just running around trying to be like Dylan. Maybe the new Ashley was no more real than Little Miss Perfect. Chapter 11, Brooke. I was just dying to know how things were going between Matt and Courtney. Just the day before, I'd seen Courtney going down the hall with her arms wrapped around Matt. They hadn't seen me. They were so involved with one another. I watched Matt take Courtney into the nurse's office. Of course, I knew what Courtney had done, pretending to faint or twist your ankle or whatever. It was one of the oldest tricks around. I've used it several times myself. It makes you seem all helpless and the guy feel big and strong. Guys go bonkers over that. They can't help it. It's like they have some leftover caveman genes that that get all charged up. But I had to hand it to Courtney. I didn't think she had it in her. It seems I underestimated the girl. There was no sense wondering. I was sure I could get the entire story by making a quick trip to Courtney's locker and reading it for myself in her diary. But now she has surely written all about it. This was big news for old Courtney. After the homeroom bell rang, I ran around to Courtney's locker and got hold of the diary. I was in luck. She'd written a whole new page. As I expected, there was a bit about how nice I'd been, helpful, sensitive, blah, blah, blah. I love a compliment, but I wanted to get to the Matt part. Instead, Courtney kept on and on about me. Apparently, I'd made a big impression on her. Then came the totally surprising part. Here's what she wrote. I've misjudged Brooke. I've been asking other kids what they think of her and finding out some very interesting things. Guess who has a wild crush on Brooke? Scott Bradley. That's right, the hunkiest senior in the whole school, president of the student council, star football player, Luke Perry, look-alike. Scott Bradley? I didn't think Scott Bradley knew I was alive. Scott Bradley is a whole new dimension in guyness. He's like a movie star without a movie, a rock star without a CD. I mean, he has all the ingredients. He just has to do something to become famous. He's one of those guys, will be famous somehow, some way. Every girl in the school was in love with him, but Scott Bradley had a crush on me. I read some more of the diary. I got it from a very good source that Scott thinks Brooke is so popular and sexy that he's too shy to approach her. All she would have to do is say the word, and he would fall at her feet. I'm not sure whether or not I should tell Brooke this. Scott is older, and he'll be going to college next year. Maybe she shouldn't get involved. I shut the book with a clap. Courtney, you dweeb, only you would keep information like this from me. Maybe she shouldn't get involved. What a moron. Tossing the diary back into Courtney's locker, I ran to the girls' room to freshen my makeup and hair. Who cared about first period math when I was about to embark on the romance of a lifetime? Keep cool, I coached myself as I relined my eyes in the bathroom mirror. It wouldn't pay to seem overeager. I blow Scott's whole image of me. I had to remember that I had the upper hand. Scott was already crazy about me. It seemed to take forever, but finally the bell rang for second period. I knew where Scott's locker was. What girl didn't? Casually, I strode towards it. As classes were changing, I was in luck. Scott was there, surrounded as always with a small group of his football player friends. Any of them qualified as a hunk, but Scott was the hunk of hunks. While I was in the girls' room, I decided what to do. There was no sense beating around the bush. He wanted me, I wanted him. There was no need to bring him chocolate cake or pretend to faint. The direct approach would be best. I would saunter right up to him, ignoring his little crowd of pals. Then I gaze at him long and sexily, and I say something witty. He put his arm around me, and we walked down the hall together, the new king and queen of Hillside High. Here goes, I whispered to myself as I prepared to approach Scott. Tossing back my hair, I made my entrance. I walked right up to him real close. All his friends stopped talking and stared at me. Yes? Scott asked. Not exactly the reaction I had expected, but I decided he was just nervous. I locked my eyes into his with my most sultry gaze. I feel the same way you do, I said. Scott scowled and looked at his friends, question marks in his eyes. Excuse me, but who are you? He asked. Panic attack. Something was terribly wrong here. Then he laughed. I get it. More freshman initiation. They sure put you guys through hell. Tell those juniors to give it up already. It's getting kind of late in the year. Freshman? He thought I was a freshman? And this was all part of some initiation prank? Excuse me, I said, pushing my way out of their circle. I could hear them laughing as I fled down the hall. She's not a freshman, she's older, I heard one guy say. I think my sister knows her. What a space cadet, Scott said. Banging open the door to the girls' room, I ran into a stall and completely lost my breakfast. It had been the single most humiliating moment of my life, and there had been witnesses, too many witnesses. It would be all over school by this afternoon. I wanted to die. How could this have happened? Then I realized the truth. Courtney, you little slime, I whispered. I'll get you for this. But mad as I was, I realized that this was Courtney's payback to me. I had underestimated her. Chapter 12, Ashley. The day after Matt called about the diary, Dylan came to me with great news. I got it, he told me, his brown eyes lit with excitement. Got what? The gig. Remember the other day when I told you about the guy who owns O'Donnell's pub? Sure, I said. You told me he lives down the block from you and he keeps a rooster in his backyard who wakes up the whole neighborhood or something like that. Yeah, that's the guy. Well, you know, I was talking to him and told him I was a musician. Then he told me he might need someone to play at night. I grabbed Dylan's arms excitedly. You got the job? Dylan nodded happily. I'm playing tonight. Just me alone. His stage isn't big enough for a band. I have to be there at 7, but you can come at 8. Knock at the back door and I'll let you in. That way you won't get carded. Once again, luck was on my side. My parents were going out to dinner that night with my mother's boss, just for effect. I came home and washed off all my makeup and brushed out my hair. I don't feel like being all alone tonight, I told my mother. Would it be all right if I slept at Courtney's house? My mom was delighted. She told me I looked nice and that she was glad I was still friends with Courtney. I guess she noticed that Courtney had stopped calling the house. They left at 7. The coast was clear. I was real excited as I got dressed and pretty nervous too. I had to make sure to look as old as possible. Dylan had lied to the owner and told him he was 21. But there was no way I looked 21. I prayed it would be dark inside the bar. Slipping into the tight black dress I'd worn to Dylan's concert, I loaded on all my new, cool jewelry. I teased up my fine hair and then swept half of it over to one side. Once I stepped into my high heels, I was done. I could have passed for 19. Hopefully the dim lights would do the rest. I put on my jean jacket and headed to the bus stop. By the time it neared O'Donnell's, I was the last person on the bus. The pub isn't in the greatest neighborhood, and to make matters worse, the sky was dark with clouds. In the distance, thunder rumbled. A storm was obviously rolling in. The 5-block walk to O'Donnell's seemed very long. Nothing happened, though, and I made it safely from the bus stop to the back door of O'Donnell's. After a few sharp raps and some fidgety waiting, Dylan opened the door. He looked cool in a 60s style print shirt and tight-ripped jeans. The place is packed, he told me. We sat together backstage while he tuned his acoustic guitar. Dylan was tense and didn't say much. Are you okay? I asked. He seemed so far away. It made me feel all alone. He nodded. You better go out front. I have to go on in 10 minutes. I kissed him lightly on the lips. Good luck. Thanks. O'Donnell had just a tiny stage in the back. Small tables were clustered around it. Dylan had been right. The place was packed. I managed to find a table and sat down. The table was next to another longer table full of guys. Hey, babe, one of them, a fat, slobby-looking character, called to me. My friend here wants to meet you. His friend was a skinny guy with greasy blonde hair. It was easy to see that he was completely drunk. Come over and sit with us, cutie, he slurred. I gave him a dry little smile and stared at the stage. Thank goodness Dylan picked that moment to come on. He started with a song on electric guitar and the crowd quieted down right away. He was great. It was a good thing, too. It would have been awful if he bummed with that crowd. They didn't seem like the type who would give him a break if he started off badly. I tried to concentrate on the music and ignore everything else, but I couldn't help looking around the pub nervously. Then I saw the bouncer, the guy who checks for IDs, scanning the room. He was a huge, muscular man with a nasty sort of face, and he was heading right for me. It would have been so mortifying to be thrown out. What if he called my parents, the police? Before he reached me, I gathered up my purse and slipped out the side door. Dylan was busy singing. He didn't even notice me leaving. Outside, the storm was really whipping up. Loose garbage was blowing around in the street. A bang of thunder made me jump. Then lightning lit the sky. A fat raindrop plopped on my forehead. Turning up my collar, I headed for the bus stop. The street was almost deserted. The stores all gated over. Then a large brown car turned the corner behind me. There was something really creepy about the way it drove along slowly, too slowly. I walked faster, but the car speeded up too. I couldn't really make out the driver. What if it was one of the guys from the bar? What if he was following me? The rain started really coming down. I was soaked. The bus stop was only half a block away. I started to run. I heard the sound of the car behind me. Out, I cried as my ankle twisted with a painful throb. Down I went, crashing to the cement on my knees. My stupid heel was caught in a crack in the sidewalk. I kicked off both shoes and got up. Suddenly, like a miracle, the bus turned the corner onto the street. I couldn't wait for it to reach the stop. I ran out into the middle of the street and waved my arms. The bus stopped with a squeal of brakes. As the door opened, I hobbled up the steps. That man in the car, I sobbed to the driver. He was following me. The driver stepped out of the bus. The car was gone. Sorry, miss, the driver said, stepping back into the bus. I don't see anyone. He was there, coming toward me. I insisted as I sat in the front seat, shaking and sobbing. Are you sure? The driver asked, returning to his seat. Maybe he was just going to that all-night deli up ahead. I peered out the front windshield and saw a lighted store in the middle of the next block. Through the rain, I saw a man come out with a package under his arm and ran toward his car. I guess you're right, I admitted, feeling like a fool. The man was probably going slowly because he was looking for the deli. What a jerk I had been. This is a rough neighborhood. It can make you jumpy, the driver said kindly as he drove. What are you doing out in this part of town anyways? Too many crazies around here at night. All sorts of creeps. I went to pay the fare, and that's when I realized I didn't have my purse. Maybe I'd left it in O'Donnell's, or perhaps I dropped it when I fell. I explained to the driver that I lost my purse, and he said not to worry about the fare, but my house keys were also in the purse. I was locked out. I looked a wreck, and I couldn't go back, and I couldn't go to my neighbors. There was only one place I could think of to go. Courtney. I was in my room studying when suddenly I heard this strange sound at my window. I sat up and rubbed my eyes. Garbage cans, I decided. It had rained hard and everything was still all drippy. Turning the page of my English book, I went back to reading. Ping, ping, ping. There it was again. I went to my window and looked out. Small gray pebbles danced up before my eyes. Someone was throwing gravel from the driveway up at my window. It was Ashley. Dashing down the stairs, I ran into the kitchen and let her in the back door. She was a mess. I couldn't tell she'd been crying. Her makeup was all over her face. She was completely soaked. Her black stockings were ripped and one knee was badly scraped, and she was carrying her shoes. What happened? I asked. I didn't know where else to go, said Ashley. Then she burst into tears. Come up to my room, I said, putting my arm around her. My mother was watching TV in the den, so we were able to get by without her noticing. Once we were upstairs, I got Ashley a towel. She was shaking all over. Then we went to my room. What happened? I asked again. I was really scared. I'd never seen Ashley like this. She told me the whole story. Oh, Ashley, I said, you could have been really hurt. I don't even want to think about it. Me neither, said Ashley. Then Ashley did a really strange thing. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and she started to laugh. That totally scared me. I thought she was having a nervous breakdown or something. What's so funny? I asked. Me, the way I look, she said, her laughter subsiding. I look so bad it's funny, like a little kid, all dressed up, who got caught in the rain on Halloween night. I smiled slightly. You do sort of look that way. Ashley shut her eyes. A long shiver ran through her. Here, you better get out of that wet stuff, I said, handing her a terry cloth robe. Why don't you take a shower? While Ashley was in the shower, Mom knocked at my door. Her expression was very serious as she stood outside in the hall. What's wrong, Mom? Courtney, Ashley's mother is on the phone. Ashley told her she was spending the night here. I told her that wasn't true. Do you have any idea where Ashley might be? She's frantic with worry. I said I would ask you. At that moment, Ashley came out of the bathroom wearing my robe, with her hair wrapped in a towel. I forgot to tell you, Mom, sorry, I stammered. Courtney, my mother scolded. How could you be so thoughtless? Sorry, I repeated. We'll discuss this later, she said angrily. Right now, let me tell Ashley's mother that she's safe. Wow, that was a close one, said Ashley as my mom went downstairs. I think we better talk, I said when we were in my bedroom. I know all about Brooke reading my diary. Why didn't you tell me? I was so hurt by what you'd written about me. I felt so let down. Aren't there things you don't like about me? I asked. If I read your diary, wouldn't there be some complaints in there? I don't keep a diary. Ashley avoided the question. If you did, I guess a few. It wouldn't mean I didn't like you, though. It's the same with me, I cried. And you shouldn't have suspected me and Matt. We both care about you. Matt is worried sick about you. So am I. I took my diary from my drawer. I brought it home after I discovered Brooke was reading it. Brooke only showed you the part she wanted you to see. Read this. I wrote it a couple of days ago. Opening to the page, I handed the diary to Ashley. I sat beside her as she read it out loud. I miss Ashley so much. I'd do anything if we could be friends again. If only she'd give me a chance. I'd apologize for anything I've done. I'd explain that I only met Matt at the Avalon so that he could straighten things out between Ashley and me. I couldn't seem to reach Ashley anymore, though. She's drifting further and further away from me. Sure, it hurts to see her with Dylan, but the thought that she and I might never be friends again is worse. It makes me feel all empty and hollow inside. Brooke just showed you the few complaining things I said about you, but there are pages and pages in here that talk about what a good friend I think you are and how much I admire you. I went on flipping through the diary. I found the page I wanted. I'd written it a couple of months ago. It was all about how much I appreciated Ashley's caring and kindness when I first learned that my parents were divorcing. Ashley is the greatest friend anyone could have, Ashley read out loud, her voice shaking a little. She's more like a sister than a friend. I know that whatever happens to me, I can count on her friendship. I hope she knows she can count on me too. Ashley put down the diary. I've been a real idiot, she said. We looked at one another a moment, and then we both burst into tears. You know, it really did hurt that you started seeing Dylan. I wept. You know how much I like him. I figured you didn't like him anymore since you were going after Matt, and I probably wouldn't have cared anyway. I felt so hurt that I wanted to hurt you back. Well, you did, I said, wiping my eyes. And do you really think I'm fat? Ashley laughed through her tears. No, that was just the meanest thing I could think of to say at the time. I was sure you realized that. I took a tissue from my dresser and blew my nose. I didn't know it. I thought you were serious. I was kind of a jerk about the whole thing. You didn't do anything dumb, like starve yourself. Suddenly alarmed. Did you? I nodded, almost. I fainted in the hall. I sat back on my bed next to Ashley. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, she said, putting her arm around me. I'm really sorry about everything. That's okay, I said, giving her a hug. It's all over now. We sat there and talked for a long time. Are you going to keep seeing Dylan? I asked. I decided that even if she was, I'd have to live with it. It wouldn't be easy, but I would try for the sake of our friendship. I don't think so, Ashley said, shaking her head. He's a lot nicer than I thought he was. I hope we'll always be friends, but it wouldn't work out between us. Why not? I needed to know. I was never myself with Dylan. I was always trying to be wild. I mean, Dylan and I liked each other, but we never really touched. We were sort of in two different worlds, just going along side by side. I'm pretty sure Dylan felt the same way. With Matt, it was always different. At times, we would feel so close, almost as if we were one person. Are you going to go back with him? If he still wants me, oh, he'll want you, I said, laughing lightly. Ashley smiled. Then her face grew serious. You know what? I'm not really sad that all this happened. Even though I can't live in Dylan's world, it did me good to go there for a while. There were moments when I felt really happy, free in a way I never felt before. I don't think I'll ever again be quite as upset as I was. I showed Ashley the part in my diary where I'd written about the Scott Bradley joke Matt and I had played on Brooke. Matt had gotten the whole story from one of the guys he knows on the football team. Ashley laughed so hard. Big tears rolled down her cheeks. Both of us were nearly breathless from laughter. Our sides ached. It felt so good. I can't believe you did that, said Ashley, still holding her side. That doesn't sound like you at all. I've changed a little in the last weeks, too, I said, still panting with laughter. We stayed up almost all night talking. Things hadn't really changed. Well, maybe they had a little, but that was all right. Things always seem to be changing one way or another. I guess that's life. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Bye.